Excellency President, very warm welcome. We, as the academics, researchers, and journalists, always try to write a piece that starts good and ends good. So, thank you very much for helping us to end our forum with this interesting talk with you. Very appreciated. Thanks for your presence. We know that you are here in your busy schedule, made time within your busy schedule to be with us here. The topic that we are trying to talk about is, as you know, is we all know that the region, the wider region, and the world is witnessing transformation. So we want to see where Kurdistan region fits into this general picture. We want to talk about the future of Kurdistan region, where the Kurdistan region is moving towards. So I have divided my question onto three parts. Mr. Beston tried hard to get the question out of me, but I didn't talk about the questions. So the first part of my questions is about your view and opinion about the international changes and transformation. What are your views on those? The second part is about the Iraqi situation. The third part is about the situation of Kurdistan region in particular. But before I go to the more political and dry questions, I want to ask you a personal question. I saw a clip on TV. We were sitting with Mr. Ako Mohammed. You paid a visit to a family during the earthquake in Kurdistan, North Kurdistan, Turkey. Somebody talked about the fact that a number of people, members of the family, died. I just want to know, what was your feeling as a leader who paid a visit to a person during crisis? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Welcome to all of our dear guests who are present here, who are participating, and thanks for the invitation. Of course, as any human being, when we see such a scene, when we witness such a disaster that took place in Syria and Turkey, it's very, very difficult, and it's a source of sorrow. In Kurdistan region, we wanted to respond from the first moment when the earthquake took place. The Kurdistan regional government very quickly and very rapidly tried to respond with all the resources that are available to us: Ministry of Health, civil response units, and of course, above all, the Barzani Charitable Foundation, because what we see there, what they have done there, is a source of pride for all of us. I think this has a very good impact as well inside all the components of the Turkish state for the relations of Turks and Kurds. And of course, as a human being, as I said, that when we visited the family under the tent who lost most of their loved ones, this was a very, very painful. It was very sad. And I hope this is their last sorrow, and hopefully the places were destroyed will be rebuilt soon. And again, I say we are proud for the works that we have done by the KRG institutions, by the private sector institutions, and by the Barzani Charitable Foundation. Thank you very much. I ask this question because I know that the response was very welcomed in Turkey, and many Turks welcomed this response and your visit to Turkey. Let's go to the questions. I just want to start from the diplomatic traffic and movement that you've been having within the last year. For example, your visit to Turkey, to München, to in most of the meetings that you had previously, you were concentrating on the internal affairs, but in 2022 you were mainly focusing on the international dimension of your diplomatic activities. What is behind this change? We work at two levels, the internal and external, as the Kurdistan region and also, of course, as Iraq. These type of conferences, like München Security Conference, is a very good opportunity for Kurdistan region to present its vision on how to solve the problems of Kurdistan region of Iraq, so that we can discuss these solutions with others. So within this conference in Munich, we had many good meetings with officials from different countries, and we presented the vision of Kurdistan region. And what I sensed is that Iraq in general, Kurdistan region included within Iraq, now at the center of focus at the international level, because the stability of Iraq has implication for the stability of the wider region. Kurdistan region can play an important role in that stability with Iraq. I think the strength of Kurdistan region is not a risk, is not a threat for Iraq, and the strength of Iraq is not a risk or danger to Kurdistan region, because our strengths are complementary. We complement each other. So this is how we view it. Yes, we have two entities within one state. That's the important factor, and our state is called Iraq. Kurdistan region within this framework, based on the constitution and based on our own political vision, we have been trying to reach out to different countries, talk to different countries. Of course, at this point, the Ukraine-Russia war is one of the hot topics around the world, everywhere. But what I saw that Iraq is not under or out of spotlight. People see Iraq transformed, a different Iraq. They see Iraq that has risen up economically, that has risen up politically. And the role of Iraq is valued, and they see it as very important. So within this framework, Kurdistan region can be cooperative, can be helpful in achieving stability, peace, and security in the region and in Iraq. I think you use two entities within one state. Probably this is a very interesting concept. Within this framework, Davos conference, also before the mentioned security conference, it was about the cooperation in a fragmented, that slogan was a cooperation in a fragmented world. But the München was more about a revision of what we have. What did you see in München? Do you think, for example, the West, who has been in the last 200 years leading the political affairs of the world, do you think that they are revising their relationship with the outside world, and where Iraq and Kurdistan fits in this transformation? Yes, of course. Following what's happening, the war between Russia and Ukraine, we sense that there is a serious revision or review of all the issues around the world. In Munich conference, we sense this very, very clearly. Because people were talking about that every country is looking for new partners. So the countries around the world are trying to reorganize themselves around these new concepts. So it's a new time for new cooperation and new partnership. I think Iraq can play a very important role in this gesture. Iraq, including Kurdistan region, can play a very important role at the energy level in order to solve the problems of some of the Western countries. For example, we know the Western states rely on Russian energy, Russian gas for their energy. So Iraq can play a role in this regard if you have a realistic vision. So Kurdistan region and Iraq, if we work together, we can play an important role if we work together and cooperate. So I think this is a golden opportunity for Kurdistan region and Iraq to play an important role in the energy sector around the world. I think the foreign minister of Iraq is here. How do you assess the foreign policy of Iraq and Kurdistan? And how do you think that it is difficult for Kurdistan region to strike a balance between the different pillars around the world? And the different states around the world. I think Iraq is doing very well, and the Iraqi foreign policy framework is that Iraq wants to become the bridge. They want to be the bridge makers, and Iraqi foreign minister is here. They have been working very hard. They have been working very seriously for Iraq to play this role. And the regional states and the other international foreign states, they are looking favorably to the Iraqi attempt to become a bridge, a regional bridge. I think Iraq cannot be able to be part of any of these fronts, but Iraq can be a bridge between to bridge the differences between these rivals. I think Iraq has been playing this role and has been successful in as such, and hopefully Iraq will remain to be successful in doing so in the future. I want to go to another topic. I think it is still related to this international rivalry and related to the foreign currency crisis, exchange rate crisis in Iraq, which has caused many problems for the Iraqi government. Do you think this exchange shock was a result of a political situation, or I think they should have to ask that question to the economists that are here. Because he's been in the US and he just came back. We've been discussing with the previous prime minister. We talked about this issue. We talked about this with the foreign minister, Dr. Fuad. Of course, the issue of US dollar and Iraqi dinar is impacting everyone in this country. Because we need currency or exchange rate stability. Otherwise, we will face many economic pressure, particularly the citizens will face many economic pressure. I think within this framework, so far, what we have been witnessing, many people talk about it in the context of politics, and then many people say that many states around the world should have been controlled. Our relations with other countries should have been controlled. But I think this is about reorganization, and this restructuring and reorganization that is based on an agreement with Iraq in the last couple of years. But it has been reached in the last year, and it has been implemented now. And the objective of this agreement is to create more financial stability in Iraq. So what we see following the latest visit of the Prime Minister of Iraq to Washington with the foreign minister, we see that this issue is moving towards a resolution. I think this resolution probably will have harms in the short term, but in the long term, it will lead to economic stability in Iraq at large. Another question about the general situation in the world. You know that Europe and US are preoccupied with their rivalry with Russia. Turkey is moving towards a decisive election. Iranian foreign relation and even internal affairs is moving towards a very decisive future. Iraq witnesses rivalry among every factions, among the Kurds, among the Shia, between these factions. and the Syrian situation is also remaining very complicated. What do you expect for the future of Kurdistan in these contexts? Do you think that the rivalries and conflicts inside Kurdistan will be increased, or do you see any other scenario different from this? If the question is about rivalry and conflict in Kurdistan, competition, political competition and political rivalry is in Kurdistan, yes, we have this, but it is political rivalry. But if the question is whether these political competition would lead to will lead to heaven for God forbid to confrontation, military confrontation? No, of course not. I didn't want to put the question in this context. Yes, that's what I meant. Yes, I assure you that this is not going to happen. We all the political parties in Kurdistan, KDP, UK, KDP, they have left this stage behind long time ago, and I do not predict that the Kurdistan region would ever return to the stage of, God forbid, military confrontation or military conflict, armed conflict. The future of Kurdistan region, I think it is a bright future. Kurdistan region as a constitutional entity, which is provided for in the Iraqi constitution. This is a stable issue, and nothing will go back to the pre-constitution. But the question is whether so far, to what extent this constitution have been enforced and implemented. Our point in Kurdistan region, ever since 2003, we don't see seriousness when it comes to the enforcement of the constitution so far. The main question is whether Iraq is moving towards federalism or whether it's retreating towards centralism. So that's what, in our opinion, if Iraq is moving towards federalism and strengthen the pillars of the foundations of federalism, we will have a bright future, not only for Kurdistan region but for Iraq as well. And this is the right solution. This is the right path. The policy of Kurdistan region is this: that within the Iraqi, within the framework of the Iraqi state and within the framework of the constitution, we need to solve these problems. The internal rivalries in Kurdistan, it is disturbing for all of us. It's tiring for all of us. It's tiring for the public. And I also think that it's time to overcome these problems, to solve these problems. And we need to solve those problems with the PUK. I think I can take this venue as an opportunity, this conference as an opportunity, and ask our friends in the PUK, ask Mr. Qubad, Talabani, the PUK team in the government, please come back to the government. Yes, there are concerns, there are issues, there are, of course, the concerns and the complaints about the government, the prime minister, and we all take these I have taken all of these into consideration. But the solution is not to be outside the government and solve those problems and talk about these problems. The solution is to get back together, sit down together. The deputy prime minister to get back to the meetings of the council of ministers, and we all have to work together to take this golden opportunity that presents itself for us in Kurdistan region and Iraq. We should not lose this opportunity for the sake of little and meaningless things. I don't mean that these issues are meaningless. Of course, they are small issues. But I mean that it can be solved within the government. If you cannot sit down together and discuss and have a dialogue together, if we talk about these issues outside the Council of Ministers, then things will not be solved. So they need to get back to the Council of Ministers. Hopefully your colleagues will hear this message, and they will make a decisive and quick decision to return to the Council of Ministers. Yes, I think this is another surprise of the Erbil Forum, your message. I want to talk about other issues related to Kurdistan region, but before that, I want to ask about a few questions about the Iraqi government. Following the elections of 2021 elections, you had many attempts to bring all the parties together in order to form a government. You paid a visit to Hanana and Najaf. You also tried to create a coalition with others to form a government. At the beginning, you sounded very optimistic about the fact that the government that to be formed will have a good agenda. But when you talked about, when you reflected on these in Munich conference, you sounded a bit different. So, did you have any doubts about the elements inside the government, the people that were the parties who have formed the government? I think probably there has been misinterpretation of what I have said. I don't think I didn't sound pessimistic in Munich. But let me just explain this. The government that we have formed for the first time after 2004, when we form a government, we always reach a political agreement. We will have a written political agreement between the parties that are forming the government. And also in that agreement, there is always talk about how to move to solve the problems, and deadlines are also set to the solution to find solution for those problems, and there are always meetings with for the with among the parties that are making the government or forming the government to see what type of laws need to be enacted, what type of problems need to be solved, and how to move forward. On the other hand, what we see, and as a result of our meetings and communication with the Prime Minister, we sense that there is a serious intention to solve the problems. What I said in Munich, when I said that if the problems are not solved, there is no meaning for the Kurds to remain within the government. I don't mean the Prime Minister. I mean those parties, those elements that are making the government. They mean that everyone needs to support the Prime Minister to carry out the government's agenda, to carry out and implement the agreement that we have all agreed on. The Prime Minister, I think he's been in power for the last 4 or 5 months. And so far, what we see is a positive atmosphere. We see a positive atmosphere between Baghdad and Kurdistan region at all levels. We have good security coordination, cooperation between Baghdad and Erbil. We have a military cooperation between Kurdistan region and Baghdad. And there are also attempts to overcome, to enact the budget law as soon as possible. All of these, we need to view them in a positive light and the optimistic view, not in pessimistic view. So our policy in Kurdistan region is to support the Prime Minister Mohammed Shia Sudani, and no changes have been made into this policy. For us in Kurdistan region, is very important for these problems to be solved with Baghdad. If these problems are solved, it will lead to political stability, economic stability, and security stability in Iraq and in Kurdistan region. So this is our main intention and aim. So His Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, is leading the Kurdish team, and he is representing us in all of the meetings. And we have a meeting. He gave us a report about the steps that the steps that have been taken are very, very hopeful. We should be optimistic. So I always repeat the fact that I hope that Baghdad and us will learn from the mistakes that we have made. I repeat this. So everything was not Baghdad's fault, and everything was not Kurdistan region's fault. But at the end of the day, we live within a state called Iraq, and it is clear we have a constitution that this constitution is a political bond to bond us together, to link us all together, to move towards a better future for Iraq and Kurdistan region. So to this end, we need to take important steps in order to implement the constitution, enforce the constitution. What we see that the steps are taken right now towards that end, and we do not allow any opportunity to solve the problems to pass us by with Baghdad, because we are complementing each other. As I said at the beginning, the strength of Baghdad leads to the strength of a region, and vice versa. The ISIS war is the biggest lesson we learned. When ISIS came, they did not differentiate between Shi'i, Sunni, Kurd, Christians, Yazidi, Turkmen. All of us, we had only one crime in the eyes of ISIS. They view it in the same way, and they fought against all of us in the same way. So if this fate brings us together, and in Kurdistan region, we always emphasize the fact that the strategic depth of Kurdistan region is Baghdad. It's nowhere else. So that's why we have a clear vision. We learn from our past mistakes. We have a clear idea and clear vision on how to solve the problems with Baghdad. Probably you are one of those people who think that a new law will solve some of the problems. A new law of oil and gas will solve the problems of energy. I think in Iraq there are two important laws that need to be enacted and lead to political and economic stability. First, budget law and oil and gas law, and revenue sharing law. Of course, there are other important things. For example, the issue of solving the issues of Article 140 of the Constitution. The issue of Sanjar is very important. But let's be realistic. Let's start with things, and let's not all mix all the points together. Let's start with one issue or two issues. So the will is necessary to achieve this. Iraqi people deserve a better life than what they have now. The services need to be improved. In Iraq, there is a generation. We know that Iraqi population is very young. That the Iraqi politicians should take this very seriously. All these youth in Iraq will compare themselves to youth in other countries, in the neighboring countries. They strive for a better life, worthy of them. So solving these problems and bringing stability between Kurdistan region and Iraq is the key for stability in Iraq at large. Of course, Iraq including Kurdistan region. You mentioned ISIS and the fact that terrorism is still poses a threat in Iraq, and some of the camps that are falling under the control of some of the forces that fought against Daesh. Do you think that we have neglected something during the ISIS war, or the coalition or the Iraqi government who neglected it during the war? So do you mean? So do you? The question is about whether we can element ISIS only in militarily. Yeah, ISIS has two dimensions: the military dimension and ideological dimension. And In relation to the military dimensions, we have done much. There were military campaigns, Iraqi armed forces from different, for example, from the army, from the military, and from the public mobilization units. Other security forces all have made sacrifices, and of course, Kurdistan region in the same way have made sacrifices. We have over 2,000 martyrs in the ISIS war. We have over 10,000 Peshmergas who have been injured during the ISIS war. The tragedies are great, but the ISIS war is not only a military war. I think it is at the same time an ideological war. So military solution doesn't fit for this. So we need to have ideological fighting as well. We have to fight with ISIS in thoughts, in ideas. You mentioned the camps. For example, the camps are very, very important place. We need to look very carefully at the camps. So if we look at the camps, we see that there is a generation of young persons who see no future ahead of them. They don't have education. They don't have any hope for the future. So these are the type of environments where the ISIS and similar groups like ISIS will come and exploit. So we need to solve this problem. When we talk about Shangal or Sinjar agreement, we want people to return to Shangal because they stay in the camps. It's a very open opportunity for those extremist groups to exploit them and may present a threat for the future of Kurdistan region and Iraq. So that's why we have to fight against the ideology of ISIS. So we need to prevent the spread of Daesh ideologies and ideas. And we also need to address the factors that have contributed to the creation of ISIS. All the Iraqi components need to feel that they are participating in the Iraqi political process, from Sunni, Shia, Christian, and others. If they do not see themselves participating in the political process, they will always there are always going to be ground for and room for intervention or to direct them towards extremism and destabilization of the security situation. Let's ask another question about the internal situation of Kurdistan region. I think in Munich you all talked about your initiative when you come back to Kurdistan. Is there anything new in this regard to solve your problems between KDP and PUK? Yes, there are attempts, and these attempts will continue at every level. As I mentioned in Munich, I meant, as you know, that we need to have a general elections this year, parliamentary election this year, and this will have implications on everything else, particularly the legitimacy of Kurdistan region. So we should have made the preparation for the elections last year, but unfortunately last year the political parties did not agree on certain issues on the elections, or related to elections. So now in the presidency of Kurdistan region, we have started our initiative to meet with the different political parties, have different meetings, and ask all the political forces in Kurdistan region to take the elections seriously, because this is a right of the citizens of Kurdistan region. This is no political party, KDP, PUK, or Goran Change Movement can change this. So we have to all work towards this elections, or about this election, very responsibly. In the presidency of Kurdistan region, based on the law of Kurdistan presidency and the enforced law, we are empowered to designate a date or decide on the date of election. Our request on the political forces to make an agreement, because we cannot delay the elections beyond this year, because this is going to be very harmful for the reputation of Kurdistan region. Within this framework, I think it's very important to solve the issues between KDP and PUK. As I mentioned, if you look at the issues, I don't say there aren't any problems and issues, but they are not so big problems that they cannot be solved, and the problems cannot be solved by the PUK government team to be outside the government. The ministers not come into the meetings of Council of Ministers, and I repeat and I ask the PUK. I ask the Deputy Prime Minister, even if there are problems, you can discuss it with the Prime Minister, with myself, and we can sit together to solve the problems within the frameworks of Kurdistani interests. Sometimes you are approached, you are seen as a pragmatic leader who wants to reach solutions for the problems that are there between the different factions, different parties. So in most of your speeches, you always emphasize on dialogue and agreement. Do you think that the KDP and PUK will agree? Yes, I think they don't have any other way. If they don't agree, what is this? So what is the alternative? I think in one of the conferences I mentioned that two administration. I said no, we won't have two administration. We will have a zero administration if we don't solve the problems. Thank you. So if these problems between the KDP and PUK is not solved, tell me what is the. I just want to understand what is the alternative for us. What is the alternative for the PUK? What is the alternative for KDP? At the end of the day, we have to reach an agreement. We have passed many more difficult situations. Mr. Bakhtiar is here, Mala Bakhtiar is here. We have overcome many stages that were more difficult than this. Mr. Saadi is also here. But after those difficulties, we sat down together and solved the problem. Am I right, Yana? Is that right? Mala Bakhtiar, please raise your voice. Say yes or no. Yeah, please, you can say so. And yes, we sat down at the very difficult times, after very difficult experiences. I don't want to give false hope to people. I'm not saying giving hope to people just for the sake of giving hope, but I want to reassure you that we do not have any other alternative other than agreement. So this issue has to be solved. We understand the concerns of the PUK team, and the solution was not to boycott the government and not participate in the Council of Ministers meeting. Come to the Council of Ministers meeting, have your opinion, make your opinions, have your opinions heard, so we can solve these problems. And the concerns have been taken into consideration very seriously. Please come back, and let's end this discussion about this. The last question before we go to the floor and get questions about the social transformation in Kurdistan and Iraq. We know that the Iraqi population is majority of the population is below 40, probably above 50% is below 40 years of age. Do you think the policies that have been adopted by the Iraq and Kurdistan region for youth, for women, will be adapted to the changes, particularly for these demographic changes? And do you think these policies that are adopted by the government will be responsive for the demands of these young population? Allow me to start with this. When was that, Mr. Fawzi? We had a meeting in Baghdad. Dr. Abadi was there as well. I think it was 2019. We had a meeting in Baghdad. Dr. Abadi was the prime minister back then. He was in the meeting. We were talking about how to solve the problem of economic problem of Iraq. And people were asking to appoint more people in the public sector, in the government sector. I was laughing, and Dr. Abadi was also laughed at the same time. Mr. Ammar said and looked at me. I said, "Why are you laughing?" I told him that he was a prime minister for a while. I was a prime minister also for a while. We know that this is not the right solution. Let me tell you. In Kurdistan region and in Iraq, we don't have something called economics. We don't have economy. We don't have economy in this country. What do we have? We have oil. We extract this oil, we send it abroad, sell it, bring the money back, and then distribute it directly. Do you do you th- but do you think that this will lead to economic growth? No, of course not. So we have a culture in this country. What I'm talking about, when I say this country, I'm talking about Iraq from Zaho to Fao. I'm not talking about one part of Iraq. So there is a culture that everything is put on the government's shoulders. As long as we have this faulty culture, economic development will not be achieved. Iraq, on monthly basis, at probably around 5 billion US dollars, will spend for, I think, if I'm right, probably 5 billion or more, probably more. So more than $5 billion is spent on salaries, on public salaries. Tell me, name any other government around the world that can sustain itself in this way. So now we are all happy. So as a result of an incident around the world, the oil prices has risen. But of course, after the COVID-19 and the rise of the Chinese economy, the oil prices is rising. But do you think that this will go on forever? No. In Iraq, you have to think very seriously about how to rely less on oil sector. This includes the Kurdistan region, and also expectation from the government that everyone, when they graduate university, the government needs to appoint them in a public post. This has to be ended as well. These youth also have a right to look for a job, but we need to find other solutions. So if we give the right role to the private sector, if you create the right atmosphere and environment for the private sector to become the mover of economy, to give them opportunity, to give them space, to give them freedom, then the private sector can play a role to transform Iraq and to develop Iraq. You mentioned that Iraq has a great number of youth, or a young population, you mentioned. Yes, that's true. Iraq has a young population, and all these youngs have thousands of hopes while they are graduating from university. What do they do after graduation? They expect the government to appoint them. So we have a we have a factory of creating certificates. But if you tell somebody, come and fix my air conditioner, we don't have experts to do that. We will bring people from outside. We will rely on Turkish and Syrian labor. We don't know these sort of things. So these things we need to be looked at very carefully. If we do that, the Iraqi economy will develop. They say we don't have insurance in Kurdistan region. I think we have social security. Social security. Social security is not that the fact. It's not that the money you get from oil to distribute it. We need to end this. Not now, in the near future, and I see that in the near future Iraq will move towards a disaster unless these issues are solved. If we do not have the right laws to make the Iraqi economy to rely on other sectors, non-oil sectors. It's not reasonable that Iraq is buying electricity from other countries while its own gas is burnt, is wasted. While Europe is expecting Iraq to play a role in securing energy for the West. So this is the type of opportunity that we have. Let's not lose this opportunity. If you like, we can take a number of questions. Please do so. Let's start with a lady. A young lady, rather. So, sorry, all the ladies are young. Let's emphasize that. I'm really sorry about that. Okay, I can't hear if anybody speaking. Excellency President of Kurdistan region, Dr. Shukri Rasul, very warm welcome. The Kurds have a saying, okay, that's beyond interpretation. Somebody who can be very useful for many occasions. So you have gave energy to us, particularly me. You energized us because yesterday I was really destroyed, but today when I saw you, I was rebuilt. You gave us hope with your comments, with your optimism. At the same time, I congratulate you for the fact that you are raising a number of young people from Kurdistan University. As Ziryan I met yesterday from Barzani, she mentioned the role of youth. After what I heard, about the pessimistic things that we heard yesterday, I'm happy that Rodao is focusing on our strength, our energy, and the energy of our youth. This is very, very important. Mr. Sadi Pira once raised the question when he was asked, where do you think the future of Kurdistan will be? He said that President Nechirvan Barzani will have a good news. Let's wait for him and listen to him. And I think what you presented today was very, very important, very hopeful. Thank you very much. Wish you a long life. Another issue that I would like to hear from you, and do you think that the coalitions, the major forces who have played an important role in keeping our region safe, they supported us during ISIS war, do you think that they are tired of us? Because some people say that they have been tired of you because you cannot solve your problems. The things that you said and welcomed Mr. Qubat to come back, and I beg you, and Mr. Qubat also said that you need only to make one phone call. Just you mentioned these important things, so you can, in one sitting down, in one meeting, in one gathering over tea, and as you are very well known for this generosity, you've been hosting many peoples and giving tea to many people. So that's why I ask you, let's not allow anybody to move towards Baghdad alone, and let's sit down together and talk about the issues in Kurdistan and stability of Kurdistan, because this stability is a result of the bloods of our martyrs. What President Masoud Barzani talks about the sacrifices that some mothers have even given four sons to this country. I think our time is very limited. Please concentrate on Article 140. Anfal and genocide of Kurds is very, very important. Many families are still waiting for compensation, for reparation for their rights, and for recognition. Thank you very much. So let's take another question. Okay, let's. I'm sure you know Dr. Shukri. I haven't seen her for many years, but she is exactly the same. She hasn't changed a bit. Good evening. So I made a mistake and corrected by the president. Noah Khader Karim, student. Excellency, Mr. President, you had a meeting with the UN Secretary General. You know that the Kurdish population is over 40, but Kurds doesn't have a state and doesn't have representation in the United Nations. How can the United Nations defend us while we don't have any representation within the UN? The second one is related to the issue of independence of Kurdistan. I always, as a young kid, always look forward to the day that Kurdistan will become independent. Do we always keep on dreaming about this, or will you have any plan to this end? Thank you. Let's take a few more questions.
Go ahead. Good evening, Your Excellency President Barzani. Thank you for your kind speech. I would like to remind, we have only 2 minutes. 1 minute, I only need 1 minute. Your Excellency, 10 years ago, when you constructed the bridge on Euphrates to Syria, and has been since then serving our people in Syria, the Kurds. And Dr. Abadi in his panel also said the Kurds in Syria, their situation and circumstances is bad. When we have problem, Syria is tightly linked to Iraq, and their situation affects each other. So I hope that there will be collaboration and cooperation and assistance with the Syrians, especially the Kurds. Dr. Abadi, we know that we have Arab and Kurds politicians. We hope that you will make the Iraqi model successful. Our hope is that to see a democratic federal Iraq, and if the Iraqi model, the Kurdistan region model fails, then the whole area will be affected. Kindly just make your question, because His Excellency has other commitments. We have time. Let's take questions from our left. In the beginning, thank you for Rudao Research Center and Mr. Ziryan for them organizing these panels, and thank you for Your Excellency Mr. Nechirvan Barzani, the President of Kurdistan region, and to allow us to ask you directly. More than one time you have visited Al-Hannana, the headquarters of Muqtada Sadr. Can you kindly elaborate and talk about the main obstacles that stopped Sadr from participating in a Sudani government, and how do you look to the future of a Sudani government with the absence of a Sadr? I think, Your Excellency, to answer these questions prior to taking additional questions. Thank you, Dr. Shukriya, for the remarks you mentioned, and we will continue to offer all of our efforts to address the issues about being optimistic. It's not only a random saying. As I said, in Kurdistan region, and as you have indicated, this entity that we have is due to the martyrs' blood and struggle of the Peshmerga, that they tried to fight for this, and this achievement is not easy and small. If we look at the history of Kurdish struggle, it is due to the solidarity and being one team. If we weren't together, we would not be able to write the Iraq constitution and to fix the rights of the Kurds, and also the uprising of 1991. We will not be able to do anything. We must always remind ourselves this is a new modern history, and we must feel proud of these achievements for the efforts and blood that the martyrs did. As I have mentioned, we have lost more than 2,000 Peshmerga in the war against ISIS, and they were all fighting together. No one told them that you are from this party and you are from the other party. They were all died for defending this soil and land. And this resistance and struggle, we must all agree on this. Any dispute and disagreement we have, we must put it aside for the sake of the interest of Kurdistan region. We shall have one objective and goal. If we have separate goals, we will not reach anywhere. About Kurdistan, if you ask any Kurd around the world and you tell them what is your desire, their answer will be clear. But the reality today that in Kurdistan region is that we want to solve the issues and problems of Kurdistan region within the constitution with Baghdad. And this is our responsibility, and we have agreed on this. We cannot, in politics, we must have some kind of clear vision. Sending wrong messages will create problems. Therefore, we will continue attempting to address the issues. And of course, if you ask any Kurdish, it's the ultimate goal, which is natural. It is the right of self-determination, which is a normal right of any human being. About Syria, of course, we have a historical relationship with Syria, and I would like to mention something here that in hardship days, Syria assisted Kurdistan region and helped Kurdistan region, and in very hardship days, the late Hafez al-Assad opened the doorways of Syria for the Kurds. We will always remember their support to Kurdistan region. And now for us, the Syrian topic is not different from what's going on in Iraq. There must be a solution found for Syria issue. It must be a peaceful resolution. Unfortunately, for all the disasters that happened in Syria, we feel concerned and sad because they are our neighbor, and also historically we have strong and long ties. And not to forget that in very difficult times Syria supported us, and we remember this, and we will not forget, and we will always talk about it. Finding solution for the Syrian issue, we always thought of it to be a political solution since 2011. We have never believed that the Syrian issue can be resolved through the use of a weapon. There must be a political resolution, and we still have the same view. Also, the other person talked about our view. In Kurdistan region, we have special respect to Mr. Muqtada al-Sadr for his family and for the struggle and for his person. In our visits, when we went to visit him, we were always attempting and trying, not only myself, also His Excellency Al-Halbousi, the Speaker of Iraqi Parliament, Mr. Khamis Al-Khanjar, also we attempted and tried to convince him to participate, all of us, in the political process in Iraq. And now no political party or force cannot delete to look at the strength of al-Sadr current to be small. But it was their decision. After their major victory in the elections, they decided to withdraw from the political process, but that doesn't mean that al-Sadri current has been cancelled or deleted from the political process, or Muqtada al-Sadr has no role. Muqtada Sadr has a public, a religious attraction and position in Iraq, and he is very respected by Kurdistan region. What we are seeing is that in the political process, it is a political process. Maybe if today he's not inside the political process, maybe he will return. But what we are requiring and demanding from Mr. Muqtada Sadr is to support this government, to support a Sudani government in order to serve the Iraqis. This is what we are calling him for, and what we are seeing so far, his personal position. He is gratefully supporting Prime Minister Sudani, and we hope that this will continue because it is the only way to reach the objectives and for a better and brighter future for all Iraqis.
Excellency President, how are you? I'm very well, thank you. As long as you are good, we are good. All the international community, particularly states that are part of the international coalition to fight against ISIS, they visit the Kurdistan presidency, the head of government. They always emphasize on the unification of Peshmerga. They said instead of unit 70 and 80, we need to have one unit 150. I think you are belonging to the unit 150. So when these two units, when unit 70 and unit 80 will be added together and to become 150, so you're talking about unification, so it's like an addition. That's nice. Hopefully we will hear good news in the future about the unification of Peshmerga forces. Thank you. So let's answer that. Thank you very much for your question about my well-being. The second thing is the issue of unification of Peshmerga forces is very serious, and it has started seriously. Just for your information, this morning we with the representative of the coalition forces and in the presence of the deputy president of the region and Peshmerga commanders, we had a meeting on these issues. So the steps might not be quick, they might not be fast, might be slow, but they are serious. So we have a time frame, and within that time frame, based on the memorandum of understanding that we have signed with the Americans, we have a time frame, and we have not failed under this time frame. We have moved forward very successfully, and the Americans shows their appreciation for these developments, and they are working with us seriously on this issue. You all know that this is not an issue that can be solved overnight. What we see is that there is an important political decision and will, and there is a support from our the U.S. partners to take the necessary steps and move forward. So it will become 150 eventually.
Good afternoon, all participants. My name is Bilgayman. I am from Turkey. I am from Orsan Middle East Research Center. First of all, thanks a lot for giving the chance for me. My question is very little. What do you think about Turkish role in Iraq and KRG? Thanks a lot.
Kurdistan region enjoys a very friendly relations with Turkey, and even Kurdistan region and Turkey in Iraq with Turkey. the Iraqi trade with Turkey reaches about 12 billion US dollars annually. So 12 billion. And I think that the relationships between Turkey and Kurdistan region is a friendly relationship. In all the difficult times, we witness Turkey very supportive of Kurdistan region, and the policies of Kurdistan region and Iraqi policy in general, based on the meetings and discussions I had in Baghdad, I sense that we all want to improve our relations with Turkey, our political relations and our economic relations as well. If I may say briefly that Kurdistan region right now has a very distinguished relation with Turkey. Thank you very much. We unfortunately cannot take more questions because the president of the region has other meetings on his agenda. So he is making that excuse. Sorry. This is not me saying that. Of course, after he leaves, we have our panels for the from Washington Institute. Please remain in the hall so that we carry out our final panel. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for participating with us. And hopefully in 2024 you will be with us again. Are you going to do it? Excellency, President of Kurdistan region, ever since yesterday morning, the Erbil hashtag 2023, Erbil Forum 2023 has been the first without any competitor. And there has been most retweets about this, most tweets and retweets about this, the trendiest tweet. We started with a selfie in Twitter. I want to take a selfie with you as well. So your selfies are very, very famous. You had a very famous selfie in München as well.